See, we use this following option to identify any element which is present below a particular HTML element. Say for example, under this, below this HTML element, we are finding this particular element A with class value departure time. See, below element means that element may not be a child element for this HTML element. Understand? It can be a sibling element also. That means if you want to identify any HTML element which is a sibling, sibling means it is not a child element. Understand? If you to identify a sibling element which is present below a particular HTML element, that means to identify below sibling elements. When we use this to identify below
Below
sibling element.
Sibling element means child, sir.
No, sibling means it is not a child element. Child
Uh,
element means this element will be inside this HTML, correct? That is called child.
inside the page. Yeah.
Sibling means it that is not a child element.
Mhm.
Say for example, if you see this one, it is one division element, okay? This division element is inside this division. So this division is child element for this division, correct? And similarly, inside this division, label is there. So this label is a child element for this division as well as for this. This label is a direct child element for this element, and for this element it is a grandchild element. Is it right? So
Yes.
these two divisions are parents for this label. Correct? Understand?
Yes.
But this span element is not a child for this label. Correct? It is a sibling.
Yeah.
Similarly,
Okay.
input is not a child for this label. It is a sibling for this label element. But span and input are child elements for this division element. Understand? Similarly, this division element is not a child element for this division. Understand? This division is a, what is this? This division is sibling. So when we use this following, for example, with respect to this division, I want to identify this label. Is it possible? With respect to this division element, I want to identify this label element.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir. It's possible.
yeah, this label is not directly inside this division element. Understand? This label is inside another division element, which is a sibling of this division element. Understand? So
Okay.
in such scenarios, to identify a sibling element which is present below the HTML tag, then we use this following option to identify below sibling elements. To identify below sibling elements, we use this
Not child.
following option.
Yeah. Yeah. Write down the not child element. Okay.
Are you clear?
Yes, sir. Sir, in this example,
Hmm.
we have started from the private buses, right? What is the reason, sir? We have started from the private buses. We should start from that one only. Just can you tell that? No?
No, ma.
Yeah.
See, this is the X path for this particular element, SRM transports element. How you are
Okay.
identifying SRM transports? We can identify this SRM transports element starting from this division element, because this division has something unique value here, private buses.
Hmm.
So this division has some
Okay.
unique property with the class as private buses. So that's why we started from here division. Understand?
Okay.
Because
And class.
this division element has some
Hmm.
unique value for this class property. So because of that,
Okay.
we started from this division instead of starting
Yeah, one
from.
more class is there. Yeah, bus list. Their bus list is there. Details block, bus data block is there. Those are duplicates, sir. The bus list and the details. Some more classes also there. Na, next to that class.
Yeah, correct. These are all
Class.
duplicates. Yes, these are all duplicates.
Oh,
See how it is duplicate? There are multiple tags are there with same classes and with same names.
hmm.
Say that here. Detail bus block, data bus block. These classes are repeated multiple times. Understand?
Oh, that's what. Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
private buses is the only one tag. Only one tag
Okay,
is
got it.
there with this particular class value. But these class values are repeated. So that's why we are starting
Mhm.
from division element with the class as private buses. And inside that UL element with the class as bus list. And inside that LI division, again division with class details block. And then H4 with the title SRM transport. Once we identify this SRM transport, see that here. This is the SRM transport H4 link. Where is that? Inside this details block H4. This is the block. This is the H4. Correct? Suppose with respect to this element, we have to identify, see inside this time block, we have to identify this element. Which element? Time element we have to identify. This element we have to identify. This A element we have to identify. Are you getting my point? First we have to identify this element, H4 element. Once you identify this H4 element, with respect to this element, we have to identify this A element. Are you clear? With respect to this H4 element, we should identify this A departure time. For this bus, what is the departure time? So for this particular bus element, the departure time is defined inside this division. See, this A element is not a child element for this H4. Is it right? This A tag is not a child tag for this H4 directly. But where this A is displayed below this H4. This H4 tag is displayed below this H4, but A is not a child element for H4. Are you clear the scenario? So that's why we
Yes, sir.
are using here following. Similarly, when we use this ancestor, see here I identified this H4. Understand? With respect to this H4, I want to identify this division element. This division element. See, this division element is parent. This division element is present in the list of parents for this H4. Understand? This division element is one of the parent of the for one of the parent for this H4 element. This division also parent. For this division, what is the parent? This division. For this Li is the parent. For this Li Ui is the parent. For UL division is the parent. Again from division, this division is the parent. So all these parent elements are parents for this H4 element. So by using this H4, that means with respect to this H4 element, if you want to identify any of the parent, any element from its parents list, understand there are many parent tags are there for this H4 element. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay, 8, 9, 10, 11. See, there are 11 parent elements are there for this H4 element tag. So from this 11 elements, to identify any one element, If you want to identify any one element with respect to this H4 element, I want to identify one of the parent element. So in that scenario, we use this ancestor in the place of following. And similarly, when we use this preceding, suppose with respect to this H4 element, I want to identify this A element. Look at this. With respect to this H4 element, I want to identify this A element. This A element is not a parent for this H4. Is it right? This A element is not a parent element for this H4. If you want to identify the parent of this H4 element, then we can use ancestor. But here A is not a parent element for this H4 tag. So then how you can identify any element which is present above the current element? To identify elements which are present above the current element, we use this preceding. How you are using following to identify the element, to identify below sibling elements, below elements from the current element. Okay, this one used to identify web element displayed above the current element, above the current element, other than parent or grandparent. See, that element may not be a parent. Understand? This element, web element, which is not a parent element, it is not a parent. And here, which is not a child, not a child element. Are you clear? So if you want to identify the current
Yes,
element's
sir.
parent or grandparent element, we can use ancestor similar to following. And if you want to identify any web element which is present above the current element, that element is not a directly parent element. Understand? Then we use preceding. In this example, say this A element is not a parent element for this H4. But if you want to identify this A element with respect to this H4 element, that means from this current element H4, I want to identify A. Then we have to use preceding option. Got the difference, Govin? The difference between
Ah, yes, sir.
following, ancestor, and preceding. Following we use when we use following to identify any element which is displayed below the current element. So to identify any element, see if you want to identify this span with respect to this H4, what option you have to use? This span is not a child element for this H4. So we have to use following because this element is displayed below this H4 and this element is not a child element. So we have to use following. If you want to identify this division element with respect to this H4, what option you have to use? To identify this division element with respect to this H4 element, what option you have to use? Ancestor, because
Ancestor.
this division is a parent element for this H4. Understand? Suppose if you want to identify this division element with respect to H4, then we have to use preceding option because this division element is not a parent element for this H4. Are you clear?
Division of the parent.
This division is not a parent for this H4. For this
Sir, which
H,
division, sir? That clear fix is the clear fix division class. Clear fix is the parent, right?
not a parent. How it is a parent for this H4 element?
Grandparent.
No, it's not a
So,
grandparent. See, for this
okay.
H4, this division is the parent. For this division is the
Okay.
parent. But where this division is coming in the parents list? For this H4,
Okay. Okay. Okay, sir.
this division is the parent. For this division, it is a grandparent. But this division is not a parent, right? For this
Okay.
H4. Are you
Yes,
clear?
yes. Correct, sir.
Yeah, in this
Yes,
scenario,
sir.
we use preceding option. Understand? When to use ancestor,
Okay, sir.
when to use preceding, and when to use following. Okay. Now let us write review once again
Mm.
quickly all
Okay.
XPath options, different options what we discussed. See, first of all, what is the XPath? XPath is a mechanism that can be used to find XML tag path in the XML file. Are you clear? But this the same mechanism can be used to identify HTML tags in the HTML file as well, because HTML file is it's a kind of XML file. It is called XHTML. XML file is nothing but it is a kind of HTML. Both are in the same format. HTML and XML both belongs to same class files. So the same mechanism we can use with the HTML file as well to identify HTML tags. So there are different versions, types of XPaths we can use. The first one is absolute XPath. What is this? Here we define the full path of that particular element starting from the root element HTML. That is called absolute path. Relative path. What is this relative path? Instead of defining any HTML tag path starting from the root element, we define some HTML element path with respect to another element which can be identified uniquely. Understand? Instead of defining any HTML element path with respect to root tag, if you define the HTML path with starting from the root tag, that is called absolute path. Are you clear? It is HTML tags path defined from the root tag. Okay, that is called absolute path. If you define HTML tags path from another element, instead of starting from the root element, we will define HTML tags path starting from another HTML element instead of root element. Understand? Starting from some other nearby web element but not from the root element, then it is called a relative path. So relative path always starts with double slashes. Absolute path always starts with single slash. Are you clear?
Yes, sir.
And inside X, we can define X path by using attributes and values, not only by using HTML tags. See, in the relative path and in absolute path, we are defining X path only by using HTML tag names. But in X paths, we can also define attributes and values. It is possible. How we can define attributes and values? Inside the square brackets and using at the rate of symbol and attribute name equal to attribute value. This is the format of attribute definition, how to use attributes inside XPath. And similarly, we can use multiple attributes in XPath by using and keyword. We can separate multiple attributes using and keyword inside XPath. We can define inside XPath, we can define multiple attributes by using and keyword. Okay. And next one, by using HTML element position, we can also define element positions in XPath like this: division of 2, division of 1. What is the meaning of this division of 2? The second division element inside this section HTML tag. Inside this section HTML tag, we should select a second division element. Understand? So like that, we can define a position of the HTML tag or HTML element inside XPath. And we can use last function in XPath to identify the last child element in the group of elements. In the collection of HTML elements, we can identify the last element by using last function, and we use this text function to identify the HTML element by using text value. By using text value. So this is the way how we define text. See, yet should not be defined here. Yet should not be defined because text is not a attribute here. If the attribute only, for attributes only should be defined using at symbol. Understand? Since text is not an attribute, we should not use at the rate of. Similarly, last also. Last is not an attribute. See, we are not defining here at the rate of symbol. But when you are defining attribute values, we are defining at the rate of symbol. Are you clear the difference? Text and last are not attributes. That's why we should not use at the rate of symbol before text function and last function. And similarly, contains also not a function, not a attribute. So we should not use any at the rate of before contains. Only before attributes we have to define at the rate of symbol. That is very important note. Okay, so I will give note. At the rate of symbol should be used only before attribute names. Attribute names in XPath. Are you clear? Okay. Next starts with. So this function we use to identify any HTML element by using some value which is a beginning of an attribute. Attributes beginning value. To identify web element with attributes beginning value, starting value. Using attributes starting value, attributes starting text, starting text. Are you clear? And ends with, we use this. I think so. It is not. It doesn't work as for us, right? Maybe I think so. This one we can leave this one because it's not working properly. And then descendant we have seen. Descendant means when we use descendant. When we use descendant, used to select
The
descendant
first
element
different.
in the current element. Descendant element means what is a descendant element? Grandchild. Descendant means it can be a grandchild. Understand? Not a direct child. To identify any grandchild element, then we use this descendant option to identify grandchild element in the current element. Are you clear? To identify grandchild element, we use this descendant option. Child option, when we can use this? To identify immediate child. Okay. To identify immediate child element or direct child element. Immediate child element. Okay. And then following ancestor proceeding. This we already discussed. Following, we use this to identify any HTML element which is displayed below the current element, and ancestor can be used to identify any grandparent. I can say to identify grandparent element. Current elements grandparent. Are you clear? Parent or
Yes, sir.
grandparent? Parent or grandparent, it is right. Parent or grandparent element. And preceding we can use to identify any element which is displayed below, above the current element. Preceding. Okay. So these are the XPaths, very important XPaths. So it is very important to practice more on XPath, using XPath. Are you clear, Govin? Any doubts in XPath?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So have you practiced these XPaths?
So,
Practice that, and then if you have any
uh,
doubts, ask me. Okay?
okay, sir.
But we
Okay.
have to practice it. Okay? Okay. Now come. Today we will start with another important locator. See, we are discussing now locators. Locator means a method that we can use to identify HTML element in web page. See, what are the locators we discussed so far?
ID class name, ID name
One second, where we define that locators.
class name expert, sir.
Hmm?
ID class name
Yeah. See, these are the locators. Are you clear? See, these are the locators are by using attributes.
ID name.
All these attributes, all these locators will be using attribute values, except link text, partial link text. Understand? And also by tag name.
Okay.
And what is that? By XPath, seventh locator we are discussing. Now, eighth locator, what is that one? CSS selector. Are you clear? Same way.
Yes, sir.
In same way, how we used XPath, we can use alternative. There is one more option, one more locator is available. CSS selector to identify unique or duplicate or dynamic web elements. CSS path. CSS path is a mechanism used to identify. Path defines the. See here, XPath defines HTML tags path. Understand? HTML tags path in the HTML file. What XPath defines? XPath defines HTML tags path in the HTML file, starting from root tag or starting from another HTML element. Understand? Then what is a CSS selector? CSS selector means nothing but, see, if you look into this HTML file, see in the right side you could see style, right? See here in this panel, right, style you can see. That means in this in this HTML web page, there are so many elements are displayed, right? These are all elements. See, these are all elements, button and values. This is element. All these things are of elements, and every element is displayed in different style. That means with a different font name, or with a different font size, or with a different background color, with a different font color. Understand? With a different location, the location and size, with a different size of that element. That means this is called a style, the style of that element. What is the size of that element? That element width, length, location, color, okay, font color, font size, font style, all these things are will be defined inside the style sheet. For all these elements, where style will be defined? Inside style sheet. Understand? That style sheet name is nothing but .css. The style sheet file extension is .css file, where all HTML elements uh, style will be defined. So that file is called style sheet. How style will be defined for different HTML elements? Are you clear? See how it will be defined, See, if you look at that here, dot details block h4. See here, this is the style name. What is this? Details block, dot details block, and dot no dot here, h4. That means dot details block means details block is a class name. Are you clear? If any style name is preceded with a dot, that is a class name. See, look at that here. Details block. Yeah, see, look at that here. Details block. See, class name is defined here. Details block. The class name begins with details block. Inside that h4 is there. See, look at that here. H4. That means the class name begins with the details block, and inside that h4 is a child element. Yeah, bus item and then details. Yeah, details block. See that inside this bus item. See, before this bus item should be there. Where is that bus item? See that this is the class. See, for this element, for this division element, what is the parent element? This one. What is this class begins? Bus item. Look at that here. So if I select here h4 dot bus item dot details block and then h4, that means first element is dot, first class is bus item and then details block and then h4. That means this h4 element style, this is the h4 element style. How that h4 element should be defined, how that h4 element should be displayed inside the details block, inside the bus item block. Are you clear? So here they define the style. If you look at here, this is another style. This style is defined for only h4 element. That means all h4 elements in this HTML file should this style will be applied for all h4 elements. But this style will be applicable only for the h4 element inside this details block and inside this bus item block. That means if there is any h4 element which is displayed inside the details block and inside the bus item block, this style will be applied. But this h4 style, this style will be applicable for all h4 elements by default. Understand? So like that, if you look into that, right, any style, if you go to any style, say look at it here, dot bus item, that means here the bus item is a class name. Understand? So inside this how this class is defined, see any element which is defined using this class, for all those elements this style will be applied. How this style will be applied to these elements, you know, here dot bus item is nothing but if any style name is preceded with a dot, that is defines class, that defines a class. Understand? That means any element which is defined as a class value bus item, then that element should be displayed as per this style. That means this style will be applied to all HTML elements with the class value as bus item. That is the meaning of this style. Understand? Understand? Are you getting the point here? Say, look at that here again. One more. See, OL, comma UL. That means all OL elements and all UL elements will be this style should be applied for all UL and for all OL elements. This particular style should be applied. And similarly, if you look at it here, there are so many tags. These are all tags. ABBR, acronym. These are all tag names. All these tags, for all these tags, this style should be applied. See, this is the style definition. So this style definition should be applied for all these tags. Understand? So like that, styles will be defined in the CSS file. Understand? So inside this style sheet file, how they are defining the styles? By using, they are defining some name for all the styles. So those style names will be defined, will be used in the attributes. Class is a style, CSS style, CSS style name. And similarly ID, is a CSS style name and HTML tag is a CSS style name. Are you clear? That means in the HTML file, the HTML tags, inside HTML tags, there are some attributes which will be defined as a style names in the style sheet. So we can use these style names to identify HTML elements by using CSS selector locator. Using this CSS selector locator, we can identify HTML elements by using CSS style names. Are you clear? So the CSS path defines here the path of CSS style names. CSS style names. The path of defines the path of CSS styles, not the path of HTML tags. The XPath defines the path of HTML tags. The CSS selector defines the path of CSS styles in the HTML file. That means, to understand better, say look at that here. In this HTML element, what is a selector, CSS selector we can use? HTML tag can be used as a CSS selector, class can be used as a CSS selector, or ID can be used as a CSS selector. So in this division, we can use anything, either ID, class, or HTML tag. So for this HTML tag, what is a class value? Bus item. And for this division, what is a class value? Clear fix. So here bus item dot clear fix. Bus item is a class and clear fix is another style name. And bus item is another style name. So we can define in this path these values, not the attribute names. We define here the CSS style names in the CSS path. In this element, what is a CSS style name? Bus item is a CSS style name. And in this element, what is a CSS selector we can use? Class clear fix is a CSS selector we can use. Our division also can be used as a CSS selector. So these CSS selector names will be defined in the CSS path instead of HTML tags. Let us see that. I will show you one example, then you can understand this. Open this.
Sir, definition. Sir, definition is you have written for both same. Sir, you have written the same for both
Yeah.
XPath and XPath defines the traversing tags path from the root tag to specific tag.
Mm.
By CSS selector also. If you come down, the definition also will be same.
What ma? What going?
XPath and the XPath and the CSS path, the definition you have written for same, sir, for both. Can you read? You can read also, sir. XPath defines the traversing tags path, traversing tags path from root tag to specific tag. When you come to CSS path, can you come down? Scroll down, sir. Can you scroll down? Oh, that's it, sir. You have removed.
Yeah, yeah. CSS path
Before
defines
some.
the path of CSS style. Are you clear?
Uh, okay, okay.
Here it is defining
Sir,
XPath
here
define. Mm.
yeah, traversing tags means hierarchical level, sir. From root tag to specific tag. Traversing tags means.
Yeah, correct. See, I will show you. Okay, how to
Okay.
define this CSS selector. Okay, I will. It is also similar to XPath. There are so many different ways that we can define CSS selector. So just I will show you in today some one simple thing, sample thing, CSS selector document. Let me open this. See, look at that here. CSS selectors are patterns used to select the element that you. Okay. See, HTML tag is a CSS selector. HTML tag can be used as a CSS selector. That means I can define like this simply. CSS equal to input. That means if I look into that redbus.in, okay. If I take this, what is this one? One second. Go to first page, home page, redbus.in. Yeah, here. Let me highlight this text box or this text box. What is the HTML tag here for this element? Input, right? For this element, HTML tag is input only, correct? Both the text boxes HTML tag is input, correct? See now, just by using HTML tag alone, we can identify HTML element in the CSS path. See that how it is. See how I'm going to define here CSS path. CSS is equal to input. That's it. If it is XPath, we are writing here XPath equal to, right? Similarly, you should write here CSS equal to, I defined HTML tag name input. And see, find it. See, it is highlighting first input element in the HTML web page. Suppose if you want to identify this element, I think so we can use two. No, it is not like this. Let us see later. We'll see that how to use it. See now here, that means you can define just HTML tag as a CSS selector. HTML tag can be used as a CSS selector. Now it identifies the first input element in the HTML in this web page. Are you clear? That is this one. That means we can use HTML tag as a CSS selector, and we can use class attribute as CSS selector. CSS selector class value can be defined as a CSS selector. See that how it is. Let us take the same example. What is a class for this? Suppose if you want to identify this element, second element, what is a class for this? XX input, correct? Copy this. And for this, what is a class for this element? Same input only is there. So if I use dot class, see if I define XPath like this now, dot class value I defined, dot and class value I defined. Now it will identify first element with this particular class value. See, look at that. It is highlighting first element. Understanding, Govin? See how here
Yes,
class
sir.
can be defined in the CSS selector using dot. The class value should be defined with the dot. Dot and class value should be defined. Are you clear? And similarly, we can use ID attribute as a CSS selector. ID attribute can be used as a CSS selector. How to define ID attribute as a CSS selector? Using hash. See that. Using hash, we can define CSS selector. See now, let us take this. I want to identify second text box. For this second text box, there is a ID with unique value. So use this ID and define here CSS selector as hash ID value. We have to define. Identify this. It should highlight second text box. Look at that. That means ID value can be used prefixed by hash as a CSS selector. Understand? And that is the second, third one. ID can be used. ID value, ID attribute can be used as a CSS selector. And class attribute can be used as a CSS selector. HTML tag can be used as a CSS selector. And the fourth option, we can use multiple HTML tags. Multiple HTML tags. We can use multiple HTML tags in CSS selector. How to use this one? See that one. See here. For this element, what is the path? It is a kind of it's similar to X path. See, starting from, I can define starting from. Uh, Let us take HTML. Okay, starting from division. I will define starting from division input. Division, inside division, there should be input tag. Okay. Is there any combinations like this inside division? Is there any other place with the input tag inside the division? See, inside this division section is there. Inside this division is there. Inside this division input is there. Only one combination is there. Division input. Correct? So we can define here like this also. Division space we have to give. Child element. To define a child element in XPath we use slash. Correct? But in CSS path we have to define space to define the child element tag. Are you clear? See, first division, inside that input tag. So highlight this. See, it is highlighting first text box. First text box. Are you clear? So like this we can define HTML tags. Suppose if you give division, simply with division input and one more element I want to identify. One more element. Division. See, now it returns, it identifies multiple elements, not a single element. It identifies two different types of elements. One element is division input, another one is division. It cannot highlight because it returns multiple elements, not a single element. That's why it is not highlighting. That means it's like find elements. When we use find elements method, then we have to define like this. Are you clear? We can use multiple HTML tags in the CSS selector.
So there are multiple tags. So just can you repeat once again, sir, please? Multiple tags. Actually, there are multiple elements having the multiple tags.
Mm.
So which element, which tag we should
No,
take?
no,
Sir,
simple.
for that
See,
particular element?
for example, I want to identify all input.
Chennai web.
1 second. See, all input and I want to identify span tags. Okay. I want to get all input elements and all span elements. See, it is highlighting. Look at that. It is highlighting two elements. It should highlight three elements. We'll go. See, it selects all tags one by one. It will select now first HTML tag what we define. I define first input tag. So it will select first input tag. And next it will select first span tag. So like that, if you want to select multiple tags, we can define like this, separated by comma in a CSS path. Are you clear?
Okay, sir. Okay.
Suppose if you want to define a child element by using multiple tags, then you have to use division space input like this. You have to define. Okay, space we have to
Okay, sir.
use
Okay.
to define child element, and comma should be used to define multiple tags. That is the difference. Are you
Okay,
clear?
sir. Okay, sir. Okay. Tomorrow we'll see,
See
sir.
here, it
Okay.
is the child element we define here. Yeah. Okay, Govin, my time is up. Okay, just you practice, check this up to here. CSS selector parts also try up to here. And today I will send you this
Okay,
document,
sir.
XPath document as well as CSS document. Okay, made to your mail ID.
Okay, sir.
Okay, you can try
Okay,
this, and then tomorrow we'll continue the remaining CSS selector options. So
okay.
we will be,
Upload the session also, sir.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Mm.
bye.